Hey everybody, my name is Hannah Doggett. I am the Member Development Manager, and I'll probably be the person that you really hear from the most over your time as an AmeriCorps member. This training is about data and its integrity. And I know that as an AmeriCorps member, you might be thinking, what does data have to do with me, with the service I'm going to provide, with the site that I'm going to be placed at? And my argument that I hope you agree with by the end is that it has everything to do with the work that we're doing. You know, AmeriCorps is a federally funded program, as well as it's grant funded through the federal government. But all of these partners that we have are also more times than not grant funded, might be from different places, be it a government, a person, um, or just a donation. Most of our partners, if not all, have some sort of grant funding that helps keep them doing what they're doing. And at the end of the day, the bottom line for every grant has to do with data. And so it's really crucial and important that we understand the role that we play where data is concerned and upholding its integrity so that we as AmeriCorps and our partner sites are able to continue to pursue grants and funding that allow us to keep helping and serving our community. So the agenda for today, and I do want to give you a heads up, my little video will kind of change places on each slide. It's not going to be the same for every slide on this specific training just because of the formatting and layout. But just going through the agenda for this, we'll do a little bit of an introduction, move into talking about correlation versus causation, about how those two things are very different, and yet people often use them synonymously. We'll talk about data collection, but also look at data collection in terms of what does this look like as an AmeriCorps member and within this program. So hopefully you'll feel like it's a little bit more applicable by the end of this. We'll talk about data integrity, how to uphold it, unintentional ways that we might be impacting data. And then at the end, we'll kind of go over some final tips and takeaways. All right, so the introduction. Why is data important? Why is this topic important? And it's really because of money. Money, and more money. Like I said at the beginning, we are grant funded as AmeriCorps. WT AmeriCorps is a grant funded program. And then our partners, these nonprofits that we work with, generally have grants or outside sources of funding that help keep them doing what they're doing. Okay. So the data is important because that is what is used to apply for new grants, reapply for existing grants, compete for existing grants. So the data we collect is crucial for that. Okay. It also, you know, money is a big part of it, but it's also really crucial because it helps us make sure that we're upholding the integrity of our program and making sure that we're meeting our ethical standards and making sure that any code of conduct we have in place is not being breached and that there aren't issues coming up. So the data that we collect, and when I say data, I know a lot of people think numbers, but hopefully throughout this, you'll realize data is a lot more than just numbers, okay? And we'll get into the differences in types of data as well. And I realize for a lot of people, this isn't like a glamorous topic. And I understand that you might be thinking, why are we talking about this? And I hope that by the end you realize this is really crucial to your work and what you'll be doing as an AmeriCorps member, and it's crucial for us as program staff, as our partners. They're going to see it as crucial as well. Just in general, data is what ultimately is the foundation for us being able to do what we're doing within our community and with our partners. All right, so now let's talk about how data collection is actually just human nature. That as humans, this is something we do and have done since the second we were born up until this very second as well. So I want you to think about a time that you've met someone and you have instantly had this kind of gut feeling about them. It could be good, could be bad, or maybe you've walked into like a coffee shop or some sort of establishment and felt like it just didn't feel comfortable, the vibes were off, whatever it be. Or even think about, what you're going to have for dinner. You're trying to make a decision, right, about whether you like someone or you don't, whether you want to be somewhere or not, whether you want to have pizza or tacos for dinner. Generally, all of this is being based off of data that we have subconsciously or unconsciously collected over the years as humans. Okay, this is just what we do regularly. In fact, research has shown that that gut feeling you have about if somebody, you just don't like them instantly, or you hit it off, is based on years of data of your brain looking for and seeing patterns in people. And let's say there are people that you don't get along with, a lot of times they'll have similar characteristics or personalities. And so over the course of your life, your brain has just picked up on this. Okay. Data collection is human nature, period. We're constantly collecting it, be it intentional or unintentional, be it conscious, subconscious, or unconscious. We base our decisions throughout the day off of data we collect, right? So even when, let's say I'm going home from work, the data I collected coming into work could impact the decision I make on how I'm going to drive home, right? Because, for now there's a lot of construction and there probably always will be. And so as I'm driving into work, I'm making note of the places where the construction seems worse, seeing if there's another avenue I can take to make my commute shorter. Everything we do is based off of data that we've collected over the course of the day, week, months, or years. Right. But what we want to make sure, where AmeriCorps is related, so bringing it back to what you're going to be doing as an AmeriCorps member and the service you'll be providing, is that the data that we collect while you're in the program, the forms you fill out, the data that you give us, that's going to be done consciously and intentionally, right? You're going to be filling out progress reports, timesheets, even just responding to emails. That's all data collection, right? So we want to make sure that when it's being done consciously and intentionally, that we're upholding its integrity, right? Because again, going back, that integrity of the data is crucial when we go to recompete for grants or apply for new ones, get more money so we can have additional members or partners and everything in between. Okay, so just at the basis of all of this, the bottom line, data collection is human nature. This is what we do and who we are. So now let's talk about how correlation does not equal causation, okay? A lot of times people use these words synonymously, and they are very, very different. Just because two things are related does not mean that one thing has impact on the other, okay? There can be a positive relationship between, and I'll give you a couple examples, a positive relationship between two things, but that doesn't mean that A causes B. Okay. So let's always stay in this critical thinking mindset, stay skeptical. I know that sounds a little pessimistic, but I mean it in the sense of stay skeptical and just always question what the data that you're being presented and how you're taking that in. Okay. So these two examples I'm going to give you are based off of actual research studies that were done. And the point was to prove that correlation does not equal causation. Okay. So again, according to research, murder rates they found rise as ice cream sales rise. So it's a positive correlation. That means that as one thing increases, the other one increases as well. The conclusions people a lot of times draw from hearing a statement like this is, oh my gosh, ice cream causes people to murder people. Like that's the conclusion that's often made. That is what's called causation. That's saying that A causes B. Ice cream causes murder rates to rise. But let's think about this, stay skeptical, and use some critical thinking. Okay. At the same time, the ice cream sales are going to be increasing. What else could also be happening outside of what was just presented, right? All we talked about with this research study were murder rates and ice cream sales, okay? But what was not talked about was the fact that as ice cream sales increase, that tends to be when we get into the warmer months of the year. So we move into spring and into summer, and that's when murder rates also rise. So the reality is, and even though it's not mentioned here, this is why staying skeptical is so important. The reality is that more than likely, it's simply as the weather changes, as warmer months come, and it is true, as we get into warmer months, violent crimes do tend to increase. They're more common during that time of year. But that does not mean that ice cream sales cause murder rates to increase. Okay. They're related, yes, but they are, for all intents and purposes, completely separate from each other, outside of they tend to rise at the same time, which is during those warmer months. Okay. There's another research study I want to talk about that says women who own horses tend to live 15 years longer than those who don't. Okay. Again, this is an actual research study. The data I'm presenting you is only about horses and women living longer. So a lot of times people will draw the conclusion of, oh, owning a horse will make me live longer. So A is causing B, when that's not actually the case. When we think through this, owning horses and living longer are just like ice cream and murder rates, separate from themselves. But when you critically think through this and stay skeptical of that data that I just presented you, let's think about why women who own horses might live longer. Owning horses is very expensive. It's not something that's cheap. You generally need to have a good bit of money. They eat a lot, health care for them and everything in between. If you have the money to own a horse, you more than likely also have the money to be able to go see your own doctor and take care of yourself, or maybe buy better quality food, or, you name it, afford a better healthcare plan. If you have the money for horses and the resources to own horses, you more than likely have the money and resources to help keep yourself healthier. Okay. We could also think about owning horses requires a lot more physical labor because you're taking care of them. We know physical activity is beneficial for our well-being and our longevity. Okay. So it's really easy for us, and this is why I stay skeptical. It's easy for us to be presented, let's say, these two items, horses and living longer, and think that one causes the other because that's all the data we were given. But staying skeptical and critically thinking through that allows you to really kind of parse out and sift through, okay, why are these things actually related? Again, owning horses and living longer, these two things are related. Okay. So if you own a horse, you tend to live longer, but that doesn't mean that the horse is causing that. Okay. So again, these both were real research studies that were done, and their purpose was to show that correlation does not equal causation. Okay. Those two things are completely separate from each other. So let's get into data collection. As it said, there are more ways than one to skin a cat. Okay, and I know that sounds a little dramatic for a data collection presentation and data integrity training, but it's true. Data collection is not just this cookie cutter, one size fits all situation. There's different types of data. So we're going to go into this before we look at the different types of data collection, because I want you to understand a little bit about, as you go through AmeriCorps, you'll start to see, oh, this is this type of data. This is the other type. Okay, there are two main kinds. First is qualitative. So the easiest way to think about this is quality. Okay, so qualitative data represents information and concepts that cannot otherwise be represented by numbers. So when you think about qualitative, I want you to think about, how does this feel or how does this look? So it's something you're trying to describe. Okay, let's use the example of going to the doctor, because I'm going to use this example in both places. he or she is going to ask questions of like, how have you been feeling lately? You're going to use descriptors. I've been really tired. I've been stressed. I've been overwhelmed. Or I've been feeling great. I've been having good days. I've been really happy. I've felt fulfilled. That is a type of qualitative data. Might ask about how is your sleep? It's great. It's bad. It's restless, or I feel exhausted. I wake up multiple times. That's qualitative data. Okay, so you're describing something, and that cannot otherwise be represented by numbers, actual numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. Okay, quantitative. So think of quantity. Quantitative data is information that can be measured, counted, or given some sort of numerical value. So think about how many and how often. If a number is, if you're able to represent something by a number, it more than likely is quantitative data. So let's go back to the example of you go to the doctor, okay? You've got age, height, weight. Those are all points of data that are given a numerical value. So that would be considered quantitative data. Okay. If we go back to the how is your sleep, that that question can lend to both quantitative and qualitative. For the qualitative side, you might say it's been really good. The quantitative side would be I've been getting about 8 hours of sleep a night, right? So some of these questions can be both and, but the difference, understanding the difference between these two types is going to be really, really crucial and important. So let's talk about types of data collection. Okay, these are the 5 primary ways. On the next slide, I'll actually give you real practical examples within your service as an AmeriCorps member. So I'm trying to take all of this and frame it within the work that you're going to be doing as an AmeriCorps member. Okay, the first one is surveys. This is probably one of the most popular and most widely used methods to collect data. This is when people answer questions through some sort of a questionnaire to gather opinions, demographics. We can get actual quantitative data from it as well. So think about Google reviews, right? That is a type of survey. You're going to go and you're going to put 5 stars. There's your quantitative, and then you're going to write a review about it. There's your qualitative. Okay. Surveys are probably, if not the most common form of data collection. Next one is interviews. This is some sort of direct conversation with different individuals with the intention of gathering detailed information about their experiences, their beliefs, their perspective. Okay. More times than not during an interview, it's going to be more qualitative than it is quantitative. That's not to say we can't get quantitative during an interview, but think about your AmeriCorps interview, right? We didn't ask questions like, how many years have you worked? Or how long have you been out of, school? Or how long have you been in school? We didn't ask those questions. The ones that we were getting at went back to, how would you resolve conflict or how do you communicate? That's qualitative information. The next one's going to be observations. So this is going to be like watching and recording behaviors or events in a natural setting. So we're trying within observations, that data collection, you're trying not to influence what's happening at all, but just sit, observe, and take notes. Okay. Next one's called a focus group. This is where you facilitate a discussion with a small group of people with the purpose of exploring their opinions, insights, and thoughts on a particular topic. Okay, so if you think about a focus group, a lot of companies actually use this. Trying to think. Let's use Bath and Body Works for an example, right? Most people know of Bath and Body Works, whether you shop there or not. Okay, they go through these cycles of having different smells, bringing in new ones, taking out old ones, and places like that. A lot of times will use focus groups to figure out if a smell, if people like particular smell, if they should keep it, if they should make it seasonal. They'll bring these individuals in to get data about, let's say a particular cinnamon type smell. Should this be year round or a Christmas thing? Get their thoughts on that particular topic. And then the last type of data collection is called secondary data analysis. This is simply where you use pre-existing data from other records, documents, databases that already have the information in that, but the intention is to conduct new research. So you might be using the same data, but you're asking a different question and trying to answer it with that same data. All right, so let's get into the real life examples of each of these 5 types of data collection within the context of AmeriCorps. So for surveys, we've got the organizational capacity assessment tool. This is something that we use with our partners. You can also think of your progress report as an AmeriCorps member. Your progress report is a form of a survey, right? We're collecting data. Generally, it's going to be that qualitative data. We want to know how your service is going, if you're having any issues so that we can help address it. Interviews. So think about how we choose who joins AmeriCorps, that interview process we go through, but also where you're placed. And then partnerships are partially based on interviews as well, right? So we need to make sure as AmeriCorps that any partner kind of fits within our goals and what our grant dictates, okay? So we'll conduct interviews on both sides of that to collect that data and kind of make a decision based off that. Observations. So this would be member evaluations. This is something where your partner site, they do an evaluation of those members, and it's based on their observations over the course of your service or throughout it. Focus groups. Every nonprofit is going to have a board. They're going to have this core leadership, okay? Focus groups, a good example is just a board meeting, right? It's getting this group of people together to talk about a particular topic and get everyone's thoughts and inputs and feelings about it. And then secondary data analysis. So a secondary performance measure is a good example of that within AmeriCorps. Okay, so those are the different examples. Hopefully, as you get into, your progress reporting, submitting timesheets, you start to connect the dots here on the different types of data and how this is really important. Now let's talk about the why behind the what, because most people don't care about one without the other, right? You can tell me why all day long, but if I don't know how to do something like the what, then I'm gonna have a hard time with that. At the same time, if you tell me what to do, but don't necessarily tell me why, I may not have the motivation to keep going with that thing. Okay, so let's think about all of this data that we collect within, again, the context of AmeriCorps. So progress reports. This is a qualitative report, and what it does is it helps us and it helps you understand how things are progressing at your site and how your service is going. As part of your progress report, we ask you, are there any issues that have come up? That gives you time to sit and reflect back and think on whether or not there were issues. And so you can take time to take stock of that and report it to us. Timesheets. This is quantitative data, right? Quantity. It's your time in and out. Those are numbers. You're able to assign a numeric value to it. But there's also some qualitative aspects. So you can add in notes. Let's say you served late into one evening, which is outside your normal service hours for what you do, right? You can put a note there that says, had an event, attended it, and helped set up, right? That would be qualitative data. So timesheets are both of these things. They're generally both quantitative and qualitative. And let's talk about check-ins, okay? These are also normally going to be qualitative. Check-ins with us, AmeriCorps staff, is more of an informal version of that qualitative data, so more informal than, let's say, your progress reports. We want to check in with our members and our partners regularly regarding our goals, short term and long term. How are things going right now? Are there any things that I can help with, that I can answer? And long term, do you want to continue a partnership with us into the next cycle? Are you able to? And so that's what the check-ins will help with. So progress report, that's the what. The why is it helps us understand how things are going. Timesheet is the what. The why is so we know the hours that you've served and maybe what you are doing. The what with the check-ins, and then the why is so that we can help make sure we're staying on track. All right, so let's talk about data quality and integrity. These two things are different, but again, just like correlation and causation are often used interchangeably or synonymously, they are in fact different things. Data quality refers to the fitness for use of data. So it focuses on attributes like the accuracy of that data, completeness of it, consistency, its relevance, and timeliness of data. So let's think about your timesheets. Okay, let's talk about accuracy. We can pull that specific word out for quality. Accuracy is crucial because if it's not accurate, it could be potentially fraudulent, even if unintentional. Okay, so the quality of it is making sure that you're keeping track of that time, right? We talk about how you should be logging your time every single day. So you get in, you log when you came in, you log when you got out. Any break in service, you want to make a note of what you were doing. You went to lunch, you had a personal appointment, whatever it be. Okay. The integrity side refers to the accuracy, consistency, and reliability of the data. It ensures that the data remains unaltered and free from corruption. Okay, so quality, again, accuracy is kind of in both of these. Quality, if we go back to timesheets, we're thinking of it, the completeness of it. We want to make sure we have all of your data for your entire timesheet. That's why you might have timesheets that get kicked back to you. We'll ask for some additional information to ensure that completeness and consistency and make sure things are relevant. But the integrity is ensuring that, that data does not change for some reason. Maybe it's a tech issue, we don't want people going in and changing data, like we wouldn't want staff on the back end, which honestly, I don't think we can go in and change your timesheet, but that would just be an example, right? We don't want on the back end that data to be changed because that impacts its integrity. So let's talk about the two ways that quality and integrity can be impacted within the context of data, okay? It's the two F's. It's falsification and fabrication. Falsification is manipulating or changing existing data, okay? It could be research materials, processes, equipment, and or the results thereof, okay? Falsification is, again, I uppercase the word, I put it in all caps. It's about manipulating existing data. Okay, so you're falsifying what you already have a timesheet in place, for example, or a progress report, and you go in and alter existing data to maybe get different results. That would be falsification. Fabrication is creating or making up new data. Okay, so falsification is existing, fabrication is new. Okay, and it's creating that new data and reporting them as true. Okay, so fabrication could be like maybe in a timesheet stating that you served from one time to another when in fact you did not serve that day. So you're putting in new data, you're fabricating data, and that ends up being, both of these boil down to essentially being fraudulent actions. Okay, we understand that that's not always intentional. In fact, more times than not, it's not intentional. Okay, a good example is, let's say, the OCAT or even your progress reports. But the OCAT, it's easy because you can go through and it's kind of like a yes or no type thing. Progress reports, you actually have to think through a little bit more because you need to type out a good response. But an example of this would be marking the OCAT form, so going through and answering everything without reading the items. This could result in unreliable performance data. Okay, we're not saying this is intentionally done. Within data collection, I've done research or did research, and actually still am, for well over a decade. And in my experience, people more times than not, and this isn't always true, so I don't want to make a blanket statement, but these things happen, but more times than not, at least those that I've worked with and in the labs that I've been in, it's been unintentional. Okay. And so we're not here to try and like point fingers or anything, but we do want to make a point to inform you about what these things are so that you can help to avoid it and consciously be aware and think through so that when you go to submit timesheets, progress reports, evaluations, whatever else, that you're making sure that quality and integrity of the data is still there. All right, there's a lot of issues that can come up within data collection, and I'm going to hone in on this specific one right now, and it's something called demand characteristics. Okay, this is when you pick up, as the person who's giving the data, you pick up on cues that might indicate what the overall objective is. Okay, so when you do a progress report, you understand that the overall objective is we're wanting to make sure that your service is going well and that there aren't any issues coming up, so on and so forth. But we want to know, where do demand characteristics come from? Okay, these tend to come from what are called implicit and explicit biases. Okay, so these are implicit are those that maybe we aren't as consciously aware of, and explicit are those that are more outwardly obvious. And that's where demand characteristics tend to come from. Okay, I know I just said a lot that might be confusing. So now let's put it in the context of some examples. All right, so if I put this here, I'm gonna pause a minute, take a drink of coffee. I'm gonna let you look through this and think about if you can figure out what is being measured based off what I've put here. All right, so let's look at the items here. Poor appetite, couldn't shake off the blues, had trouble keeping your mind on what you were doing. All of these things, a lot of people would read this, not everybody, but it could be pretty easy to pick up on, oh, this person's trying to figure out if I am struggling with depression or not. Okay. This measure is actually something called the SEDS-R, and it's often used again to level or to measure the level of severity of depression. Okay. And so if we go back to demand characteristics and we think about those biases, if you're able to pick up on those cues of, okay, we're looking at appetite, they're asking if I felt depressed, if I felt sad, I think they're trying to measure depression. Our demand characteristics might come in and say, no, I'm not any of these things. I'm happy, right? We're trying to kind of fit into what we believe we want, or what we believe the person asking these questions wants us to answer. Okay, so that's demand characteristics. Let's look at this one. What do you think this one is measuring? And again, I'll give you a brief moment just to skim through the questions that are being asked. All right, so let's look at some of the items. Feeling nervous or anxious or on edge, not being able to stop or control your worry too much, trouble relaxing. All of these things, most people would say, tends to sound like we're measuring anxiety. which is correct. This is a common measure called the GAD-7 that is often used to measure the level or severity of anxiety. Okay. So again, if you've picked up on the cues while you were going through this and realized, okay, I think this person's trying to ask how anxious I am, if you want to not present as anxious, that demand characteristic could come in and tell you to say, no, I'm not feeling anxious or nervous. I am able to stop my controller worrying. I don't worry too much. I don't have trouble relaxing, right? So that's where demand characteristics can come in, and it's from us realizing what somebody's trying to measure. At the end of the day, my rule of thumb normally is your first answer that you put down, that gut answer, that initial instinct, stick with it. That's what it should be. Okay. So if you were gonna say initially, yeah, I do feel anxious a lot. I do have trouble relaxing, but then you're like, oh, but I don't want to seem anxious. Please answer with what you first were gonna put down. That gut answer tends to help uphold the quality and integrity of data. Okay, and this is true across everything. Let's think about progress reports real quick. There is a spot in progress reports where we ask you to report if there are any issues, right? It might be easy for you to think, oh, this one thing happened, but I don't want to tell them about this. I don't want them to feel like it's a big deal, or anything like that. Okay, so um, that's not what we want. We want to know if there's an issue because we want to be able to help you. So that first instinct of what you were going to answer, please put that down. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about interpretation of things. Okay. We can go back to horses and murders. Okay. How we interpret things based on the data that's given to us is really crucial and important. That's why we want to stay skeptical and continue to have that critical thinking. When we talk about murder rates and ice cream sales, the only thing that's being presented to us are those two things. But there are so many other factors outside of that that have to be considered. Same thing with horses and living longer. There's a lot that needs to be considered outside of just those two variables. Okay. There are different types of significance within data as well. There's something called statistical significance, which I'm not going to bore y'all with. Stats itself is almost like another language, if I'm being honest. It uses both basic math and complex Greek terms. And so statistical significance we can use maybe for grants to justify different things, but for the most part, within AmeriCorps, we're going to be looking at applied significance. Okay, so we want to know from our partners, was the addition of having a member at your site helpful? Did it help you grow your organization? Was it beneficial to the community, the service that was being provided? If they're saying yes, if at the beginning they're like, man, we need help, we're not able to build our capacity, we need help with services at the beginning, and at the end they say yes, there was a change, it was positive, this was helpful. That's an applied significance. More times than not, that's what we're going to be looking at within AmeriCorps. All right, so that's the end of this. Hopefully, by the end, like I said at the beginning, I was trying to make the argument that data collection is important to those of us in AmeriCorps or to those of us just being human. It's what we do. Hopefully, you can see the importance now and how crucial it is for us to uphold the data integrity and quality, and just avoid any chance of fabricating or falsifying data. If you have any questions when it comes to filling out those data collection tools we use, like your progress report, your timesheets, evaluations, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to walk through that with you, and give you some more just guidance if that's needed. Otherwise, thank you, and don't forget to do the quiz after this.